listening to the Virtual CISO podcast, providing the best insight on information security and security IT advice to business leaders everywhere.
I think as an industry, if you will, we've made significant investments over the last 12 years. Security awareness education, people are doing phishing exercises, a lot more focus on endpoint protection, the tools have advanced, more artificial intelligence involved, vulnerability and configuration management, EDR, XDR, SIM, SOC. Why have we not been more successful with all of those investments, right? Ransomware is still a significant problem.
Yeah, I hate to be cliche, but this is all an arms race, right? And the folks on the other side are, in many cases, just as smart, certainly sometimes smarter. I think that some of that comes down to complexity, right? I think one of the things that IT leaders are not talking about these days is the role of IT leaders, CISOs, CTOs, CIOs. I think one of the goals should be to reduce complexity creep, and try to create the most simplest environment possible. Because the simpler the environment, the easier it is to monitor, to secure, to manage, to ensure compliance of. And so complexity creep is a real thing. Every time someone in the organization goes and signs up for a new SaaS platform or uses another cloud, they've just increased the complexity of the environment, and up the ante for how challenging it may or may not be to secure it dramatically. So we need to make simplicity of IT a goal, because now we have a smaller sort of data set or environment to work with to secure. So I think that's part of it. I think the environments are getting more complex over time. And the attackers only have to be right once, right? If regardless of all the different potential mitigations and protections, if there's one vulnerability, that's really all they need. And every time we as the white hat, the white hat folks, or the folks that are doing the protection, every time that we put in a mitigation in place, they become aware of it and they're going after. I'll give you a good example. Going back to the workflow that we just spoke about. One of the things that we saw at Opti9 was the workflow changed a little bit. Once the attackers got into an environment, they became aware that hey, lots of folks have backups, and not just a local backup, but maybe an offsite backup, or maybe they have a disaster recovery configuration somewhere and they're replicating all their data. So they modified the workflow. Now when they get in, they first look for those types of systems. They look for the backups, they look for the replication, so that they can destroy that. And it makes total sense. If your goal is to extract a ransom, you want to increase the likelihood of getting paid, and so you're gonna eliminate any possibility for recovery. And so now they're going after those backups. They're getting trained up on the backup and replication software, and they're now we have to get smarter there. The other thing, I think, to answer your question, is there's just a ton of bad assumptions that people that leaders have. And I'm not really referring to IT leaders, but just general, typically folks that don't know as much. People have a false sense of security. Maybe they see a report on TV around ransomware and they're like, well, we have EDR, so we're good. Or we moved all our data to the clouds. I'm sure Microsoft is protecting us from that. Or I know we have a disaster recovery configuration, so I'm sure we're okay. And there's just all these really bad assumptions, and people don't realize, all the different layers of the stack, as you mentioned, that you have to deal with, and all the different layers of protection you need.